So hey everyone, today we'll be discussing, like Zach mentioned, the Splash's native integration with Marketo. We'll walk through a few overview slides to highlight the main integration functionality, and then we'll take a look at the recap at the end and bring it all together. So before we really dive in, I just want to kind of set the stage here. There's three core pillars to our Marketo integration, and we'll be tackling it in this order. We're going to start with the program creation. From there, we'll talk about the lead sync. And then lastly, we'll talk about the bidirectional functionality. So without further ado, we can jump right in here. Like I mentioned, we'll start with the program auto creation. So really, when you leverage the Marketo integration, your process really starts in Splash with event creation. As you create an event in Splash, we have the ability to clone a specific Marketo program template. And I say specific there because in Splash, we have the concept of event types. That's a customizable drop-down field of event types that you'll be growing using the Splash platform. With those event types, you can correlate them and map them back to specific Marketo program templates. So we know your webinar program setup might be vastly different than your happy hour program setup. And with that in mind, we allow you to automate the right program creation based on that event type selection in Splash. And I'll dive a little deeper into the program settings right here. So here's just a little GIF to kind of show you that in action. As you create it in Splash, it automatically gets filed and created in the Marketo database. So the first step there is kind of selecting that base program to clone from. Depending on what your setup looks like, that could potentially be a new program created just for your Splash events. If you already have a webinar-based program, we can leverage what you've already created. But the key takeaway here is wherever that base program lives in your Marketo database is where all of those event programs will be created. So in this example, you see the Roadshow-based template is filed under the TMA events. If I were to use that template, any event I create, the corresponding program will also be listed under that same folder in terms of organization. The next piece is the program naming convention. So with Marketo, we know that you might want somewhat of a unique naming convention that works with whatever your organization is in your Marketo database, and we allow you to do that. Whether it's leveraging dynamic tags in Splash or static text, you can really build that together to build out the exact naming convention you need. So here you see a quick example using event start date with a custom format, event title, event ID. At any point, if you wanted to inject some static text in there, you can feel free to do that. In my personal integration, I title everything FM/event : event title - event date. So you can get pretty particular in terms of what your program naming convention is. And then just know that we also have an update trigger for events. So if you were to change any of those tags or those settings on the Splash backend, we can update that on the Marketo end as well. And that's a little bit more prevalent in my next slide here around program tokens. So in an effort to be fully automated and make the marketing team's life a ton easier in terms of launching events, we've also automated the program token creation. So 100% something I would tell you guys to take advantage of, but ultimately, these are the tokens that you can use in your email templates and in your communication to really streamline that and make that a lot quicker and more efficient to scale out. I would say at a minimum, you probably want some high-level event information from Splash filed into your token. So think event title, event start date, event venue, potentially some additional information there around location in terms of city, state, zip if you wanted. But really, there's no limit on what data you can map back to Marketo program tokens. It's just a matter of creating that in the mapping screen on the integration itself. And we'll take a look at that mapping screen in just a minute here. And then the last thing to consider with your Marketo program setup is the channel itself. So on the Splash side, you do not have the ability to customize or edit any of our attendee statuses, but by way of this integration, you can create a mapping table with the Splash statuses and how they correlate to your specific Marketo program channel statuses. And you can kind of create that mapping one-to-one or one-to-many, depending on how you have that program channel status set up in the back end of Marketo. The next part of the integration, the next big component is the lead sync. So with Splash, we have the ability to both create and update leads in your Marketo database. By default, we do a lookup based on email address. If you have duplicates in Marketo duplicate leads that are using the same email address, you have a few options in terms of what duplicate you want to work with. Our system will let you work with the most recently created lead, the most recently modified lead, or the first created lead out of that pool of duplicates. So you can really try to work with the exact lead that you should be updating. That being said, as far as creating and updating these leads, we can map any data from the Splash form back to the lead record. And a question I get pretty often is, does everything from Splash have to map over? And the answer is no. You have full control over the lead mapping. So I would say some of the basic fields like first name, last name, email, company name, job title, potentially some marketing or terms and conditions opt-in like you see in this image, probably all useful information to house in Marketo. Potentially some additional information around t-shirt size or some ancillary information you might not need in Marketo. That's totally up to you to decide. But the added feature here is you also have the ability to map hidden fields. So if you're tracking UTM parameters for any of your events and want to kind of see what conversion looks like for a couple of your advertising tools, that's fine. Collect that on Splash. We have native capabilities to support UTM. And then in terms of mapping it, even though it's a hidden field, it maps the same way any other field would. You just need a map field on the Marketo side to write into. With that, I'll show you a quick preview of the backend in Splash. With this integration, everything is implemented and managed on the Splash side. So you do have to create an API user in Marketo, but once you authenticate, everything is built and managed from the Splash side. So really quickly here, you can see in the middle, we have the base program selection. Under that, you have a few of your mappings. So first up, you have the program naming convention, then you have the token mappings, the channel status mappings, and lastly, the field mappings, which would be for the lead object. So it's pretty simple in terms of building out this integration, but on the Splash side, we do have technical services that we can help walk you through, and of course, we have tons of documentations and guides on this as well. So with that being said, I will jump into the third component of this integration, the bidirectional sync, and arguably my most exciting part of this integration. So really the bidirectional component makes collaboration easy, kind of what me and Ellie talked about a little bit earlier. But if you have all of your data across all of your systems of record, it makes collaboration super simple. And this is a bidirectional sync really between the guest list in Splash and the program member list in Marketo. So let's say you get an event created in Splash, everything is ready to go, you're ready to curate your invite list and sync that in. Whether you want to do that on the Marketo side, on the Splash side, it really doesn't matter. It's all up to your workflow. And if we take it even a level deeper here, you can start to leverage some of the other applications you have connected to Marketo. So let's say you have Marketo and Salesforce. Maybe you want to curate the guest list in Salesforce, have your account executives or your sales team nominate a few attendees. That will then sync into Marketo, and by way of the bidirectional sync that we have with Marketo, that'll then trickle down into Splash. So it's very important, and really it's truly a bidirectional sync between the Splash guest list and the Marketo program member list. If you make some program level changes in Marketo, those will not sync down to Splash. We do have an update trigger from Splash event updates into Marketo, but that component is not bidirectional. So with that, we'll jump into a quick recap. And what I want to show you guys and walk you through here is what an average integrated customer looks like. Of course, this process could be slightly tweaked, but starting in the top left, like we mentioned, you really create that event in Splash. Depending on the event type that you select, we'll clone a specific Marketo-based program template. From there, you have your bidirectional sync kick in. So wherever you want to curate that guest list, whether that's Marketo, Splash, or another system, they'll always be in sync, and that data will be available across all platforms. And as attendees get those invites, start to RSVP, they're going to receive a confirmation email immediately, whether that comes from the Splash system or the Marketo system. Totally up to you. But by way of that RSVP, they also get written into the program member list. So if they weren't already on the program member list, they'll get added to it. If they were already on there, their status will get updated to the equivalent of the registered status. And then fast forward to check-in on the day of the event, whether that's virtual check-in or in-person check-in. That's strictly another status update. So that same lead record gets yet another ping on the program member list to update to a checked-in or equivalent status. And then from there, it's really up to you in terms of how you want to follow up, whether that's a simple thank you email from Marketo or whether that's a larger drip campaign that you want to drop these attendees into. So pretty straightforward there. And we'll look at some of the upsides of integrating and kind of the key benefits here. Really, I think you'll get this from the conversation I've had so far, but it's all about automation in my eyes. The automation of the program and campaign creation, the automation of the lead sync, and that's both creating and maintaining leads and program members. And then the automation of the program tokens. And combined, that'll really save your team a ton of time in terms of launching and reporting on events. But then you also get those collaboration benefits, right? Those cross-team collaboration, whether that's only in Marketo, whether that's leveraging Marketo in a system like Salesforce, but really getting that data everywhere you need. And last but not least, compliance. With Marketo, we do make it very easy to sync compliance and opt-ins both from the Splash system back to Marketo and vice versa. So I put that at the end there, but definitely not the least important, because we all know with GDPR and all the other provisions out in place, compliance has to be top of mind these days. So that kind of wraps up our Marketo segment. Hopefully that overview was very helpful. And Zach, I will kick it back to you now to talk through Salesforce.